It's hard to put so much of these things into words. You know, people ought to listen to music and be satisfied. But if they did that, then I'd be out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to describe as best as possible things like individual sounds, you know. Could you put into words the vocal thing that the Mamas and Papas were doing? I've heard it called contrapuntal, you know. I've heard it referred to as girls chasing the boys. I've heard it called a number of things. But I would be interested in what you would call it, if you call it anything.
Well, for a long time I was very influenced by four-part harmony. And then I realized that that four-part harmony didn't really have the strength that two-part harmony had. Well-arranged two-part harmony, moving in opposite directions, and then with contrapuntal lines following those, gave you a four-part harmony effect, but at the same time kept the strength of the two-part harmony. In other words, two-part harmony lines working against each other would give you the four parts, but not all at the same time. And so therefore you would maintain strength continually, rather than the four freshmen or the high-lows type sound of four-part all the way. And then occasionally breaking into a four-part chord without any contrapuntal sound against it.
Very much in evidence, I think, on 1230.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And so most of the time the boys will be singing together in unison, and the girls together in unison. And then the first set of parts, you know, either in thirds or fifths or sevenths apart, whatever. And then on the overdub, it'll be the same thing. The girls will be singing together in unison and the boys together in unison, but also in harmony, different from the original harmony parts that were put on in the beginning. And that's what actually creates the sound.
Had the Beatles done? They did some contrapuntal kind of things, didn't they? That sounded that way.
Yeah, sure, they do it very well. Especially lately, they've been doing it. They don't really use the same technique we use, I think, but same results. You know, there's a lovely sound to it.
We hear there's the term folk rock. It's probably one of those garbage words, but there has been no doubt that folk music influenced what was called rock, and that certain things were borrowed or lifted or what have you from folk music, or that were brought into rock by folk musicians. What were some of those things?
I think basically that the folk musician had a much better grounded knowledge of basic musical technique than the average rock and roll musician had, and a much more traditional standard of values as far as lyricism and situations about which to write, because the folk songs themselves, you know, are a result of what is called the folk process, you know, where a song, no one knows who wrote it really. It sort of come down from generation to generation, has been refined and refined, and a word lifted here, another word put in there, and eventually you have an immortal song, because it's been worked on by maybe 1,000 people over a 100-year period. The same song has been rewritten and rewritten and rewritten. And so it comes down to very basic elemental situations as far as storyline of the lyric is concerned. And I think most of the writers, the successful writers, Sebastian and the Beatles and Dylan, myself, Paul Simon, all sort of realize these basic human situations, you know, much in the way that a good novelist would, or someone who has to write a true story. But the song is sort of like, you know, the essence of the short story. I mean, you have 3 minutes to do the whole thing in, you know. Of course, now the times have expanded quite a bit. You can go up to 4 or 5, 6 or 7 minutes, you know. But you sort of belabor the point in a song after that.
Roger McGuinn kind of surprised me. I was praising him for the fantastic harmonies that they brought into pop music, and then he informed me that they got it from the Beatles, that the Beatles had done the harmony of it, that they claimed, you know, on Tambourine Man, for instance, he says the Beatles were doing the same thing or something similar first.
Yeah, well, that's sort of basic harmony patterns, really. I mean, it's just harmony is a funny thing. A lot of people a lot of people sing harmony in just parallel thirds, where the harmony will just follow the melody. Every rise of the melody, the harmony will go up also, and so forth. We try to do exactly the opposite. If the melody goes down, we want the harmony to go up. Always creating organ tones and pedal tones and things, which we feel gives the music more of an elemental nature to it,
California Dreaming now, if I'm not wrong, didn't Barry McGuire record that on an album?
It was a very funny
Initially?
situation. We had just signed with Dunhill, and we were going to sing background to Barry's album, Eve of Destruction. And California Dreaming was one of the songs that Barry was going to do on his album. And so we did the track and so forth, and we went in and we did the background vocals, and it sounded like a complete record, except for the second verse solo, which Denny eventually put on. And so Barry said, "Gosh, why don't you guys just do it yourselves?" He said, "It's already done." I said, "Why should I even sing against this?" So he and Lou Adler talked it over and decided that we should do it, which was very grand of Barry, and it really kicked us off.
The arrangement was the same except for the instrument in the middle.
Right. Barry used a harmonica in there, and we used a flute, Bud Shank playing flute. And yeah, as a matter of fact, if you ever get Barry's album, it's the same exact instrumental track except for that one thing, and we're singing the backgrounds exactly the same way as did on our record.
I've read, and of course I saw part of your news conference of last year when you took this break off to have some time to kind of, what was it, how you phrased it, kind of find out where you were again.
Yeah.
And I know that you were having so many demands on you that you didn't have time to write, to do much creative work at all. And yet, and of course on many of the albums you filled with some standard things. And yet you take one of the most beautiful songs you've written and you gave it to Scott McKenzie, for which I have a great a bit of admiration for you because of that. I think that was...
Dunhill wasn't too crazy about it. But actually what happened was I wrote the song, and Scott was here when I wrote it, and he sang it beautifully. And I talked to Cass and Denny and Michelle, and we all agreed that Scott should do the song. And that's all there was to it. It was that simple,
That doesn't happen very often.
No, I don't guess it does. And no one really expected it to be such a tremendous success as it was. Internationally, it was unbelievable. It sold 5 million records.
The things that I personally have enjoyed that you've done are, of course, Monday and California Dreaming, but I never can remember. Is it Strange Young Girls? Is that
Strange Young Girls?
That I really love. How were you inspired to do that one? Just walking the strip?
Yeah, well, I'm not against the use of drugs, by any means, but I'm against the misuse of drugs, and especially hallucinogens and amphetamines. And I hate to take the role of a preacher or giving advice, except in a friendly way, But I got very disturbed when so many of the kids were taking acid as a constant diet, and a lot of acid derelicts wandering the strip and so forth. And I'd seen too many friends of mine who had gotten, too strung out on it and things like that. So I decided to write the song, about that. It's one of my favorite songs also that I've ever written.
I like Look Through
My Window. Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's funny, the songs that I really love that I've written aren't the ones that were the biggest commercial successes, actually, I don't think.
Which other ones did you like, especially?
Well, Monday I liked all right, and it never really knocked me out. California Dreaming I liked a lot. That was one of my favorite songs. And Look Through My Window is, and Strange Young Girls, and 12:30, San Francisco. A lot of things on the new album, which has just been released. I think I wrote 9 or 10 things on the new album. And I think some of the best things I've ever written are on the new album. You know, Gemini Child, Ivy, things like that.
You came from the village to Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
What brought so many of the people here at that time?
I don't know. It was really a funny thing that we were all living in the village, all these people, and we went to the islands for the summer and camped out in the Virgin Islands, and there were 10 of us, you know. And we came straight from the Virgin Islands back to New York for about a week, and we didn't see anybody we knew. And we came out to California, and suddenly everyone was here, you know. Mm-hmm. The whole village sort of moved out en masse to Los Angeles. It was really strange.
I'm trying to explain, you know, this subculture that developed here, this scene, to people who've never seen it, and of course, hopefully, people 20 and 30 years from now might have a chance to hear this as we put it together for them, you know, or read it, or however it's going to be. I just wonder what was it all about? Derek Taylor gave me some ideas, but
I really no. I try to lie fallow, you know, and stay out of those things as much as possible. And I find that the more I involve myself socially, the less creative I become. And so I go on a blast for a couple of weeks, you know, see everybody I know, have wonderful times, and get drunk and loaded or whatever, and then I come home for 3 months. You know, I don't leave the house hardly at all. You know, I just work. And since we never did really go on tour, we never played a nightclub, Mamas and Papas. Our first job was the Hollywood Bowl. And I think we only did about 50 personal appearances in our whole career. And the rest of the time we spent writing or working in the studio. You know? Because we really couldn't get it together. The group was just too wild. If we went on a tour of one-nighters, like 20 shows and 25 nights or something, by the 4th or 5th night, we needed ambulances, people from place to place, you know. Denny just doesn't sleep unless he's at home, and Cass is the same way. And it's just difficult for people of this nature to really buckle down to a performance every night at 8 o'clock or something. It's impossible, as a matter of fact, for them to do it.
You know, I was lucky enough to see you twice in person, once at Monterey, and I guess once out at the, is it the Carousel?
Yeah, I think we played out there.
And that night, because the sound system sounded pretty good, at least from where we were sitting, it was amazing that you could get the sound that you had on the record, and you were one of the few groups that I'd seen in person that I thought sounded as good live.
Yeah, well,
as
the people really sing. I mean, there's no holding back. There's not electronic tricks or anything.
You had your band too, which you worked with, I think.
Well, they're not our recording band, but they are the band that we do work with when we go on the road. When we went on the road. But essentially, we've always tried to maintain that we were a vocal group, not an instrumental group. We have no pretensions of being an instrumental group. You know, I'm the only one who plays on stage, and I don't really play electric guitar that well. I still play acoustic guitar much better. I have no idea what the knobs are about, or the buttons and things. You know, I just sort of put it in one place and leave it there, and just strum it, you know, and try to sing. And but the thing is that we'd all had so much experience in live performance through the folk music and the years of playing small nightclubs and things, which is not really available now to new groups coming along, which I think probably accounts for the lack of entertainment value in the appearance on stage of groups. It's very seldom will people sit down and listen to a rock and roll group now, you know. It's usually dance music. Well, people probably couldn't dance to our music. Our new single we're just putting out, Safe in My Garden, we're mixing it down yesterday, and Lou said, maybe at last there's something they can dance to. Because we're not really a dancing group, it's more of a listening experience, you know, than anything else.
I don't guess there's much else to say about Monterey that hasn't been said, but I would, at least for this program, like to have a comment from you on any aspect of it, just so we would have it.
Well, it was one of the most fulfilling things that I was ever involved in, because being involved in it with Paul Simon and Lou Adler and Terry Melcher and so forth in the very beginning, really, I was very fortunate. I was president of the Monterey Pop Festival, and and everyone just said it couldn't be done. You know, the groups wouldn't cooperate, that the agents would raise a stink, the union would kill us, the city would do this, and so forth and so on. It turned out to be the most beautiful musical weekend that has come along during our lifetimes. And I was very sad that we couldn't have it this year. But by the same token, I feel as though we probably couldn't have matched last year anyway. It was just too grand an event last year. There's a film coming out on it also, you know, and which should be very interesting. The USC film department right now has the film, and the students are editing it.
Oh, what happened to the ABC television?
Well, that goes on 9 months from now, I believe it is.
Gee, they sure took a long time.
Yeah, that was at our request.
Oh.
We wanted to have time to put the film out first.
I see.
Before they put it on television. And they were nice enough to grant it to us since we're a non-profit organization and so forth.
Were you in the audience or backstage the night when the first show actually hit the stage and the association came out and did?
I was probably fixing a leaky toilet somewhere or something. The whole weekend, I really had so many problems involved, you know, that I saw very few of the performances. I never got out in the fairgrounds at all. I was in the office the whole time, answering the phones and getting transportation for acts and things and so forth. I never really got a chance to really enjoy it. People would come to me in the weekend and say, "It's a fantastic time, you know, we're really having a great time." I'm glad you are, you know, I go back into the office again and trying to get Dionne Warwick on the phone. It was really a mess.
It was a great week. It was a marvelous several days. Well, maybe to close, I don't know, how do we end here? Just talk about how it has felt to participate in a period of music where pop has done things that nobody ever anticipated. How does it feel to have been a part of that? Two of the greatest years maybe in the history of pop music, if not the greatest.
Yeah, well, it really feels wonderful, as a matter of fact. And when we first got into it, we met the Beatles, and I had long talks with Paul and John about the fact that at the moment, rock and roll was not an art form. And it sort of bugged a lot of people who were involved in it, that it wasn't an art form. And that was sort of a unspoken promise between all of us to raise it to the level of an art form. And that's what we've all tried to do. And to make it something that would regenerate and carry on and not fall back into Tin Pan Alley again, but would actually be the folk music of today, you know, and expressing the thoughts and feelings of our generation. I don't know if we succeeded or not.
Oh, well,
but we feel a lot better about it now than we did when we first started.
I could imagine. That's interesting conversation with the Beatles. Do you remember anything memorable that came out of that?
Quite a few things that I couldn't put on tape, I'm afraid. We were all beginning our experiences at that time and adventures. So, the great thing about the Beatles is that they really love to work. They're in the studio continually. They're making films or records. I mean, they just work all the time, you know, and that's what we are unable to do. Our group is just too flitty. The people are just too strange. You can't put them all together in a room for more than a couple of hours without fist fights breaking out and things, you know. Whereas the Beatles can sit there in the same room for a week and love each other and have a wonderful time and so forth. And by that time, Cass and I are tearing each other's throats out, you know. It's a different creative situation, whereas theirs is sort of activated by interaction between themselves, you know. And ours is more like the artists of the 30s, I guess, that used to have fist fights in the bars in the villages. They all hated each other, and they'd go and paint something fantastic or write something fantastic together, and then hit each other again and run away, you know. That kind of thing. That's more where we were at, I think.
But now you do, you know, there have been all kinds of rumors. When I was over in London, people kept saying they'd heard you were breaking up for good and all this, but you're back, you've done another album again, are you?
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever appear together again, on stage, or on television either. But I wouldn't be surprised if we recorded another album eventually. Maybe another year or something, you know. It all depends on the writing, I guess, more than anything else. If I can get myself together to write another 10 songs, you know, and arrange them, and I'm sure that the group would want to sing them, and we would go ahead and do it. I'm becoming very interested in films now, and I'd like to try to write films, screenplays and things like that.